Thank you for tuning in to another episode of my Veterans to Success podcast. You probably know by now, my mission is to help 1 million veterans and entrepreneur business owners achieve the dreams, goals, and aspirations they deserve. That is why I created the Veterans to Success podcast, because I get to interview guys, men and women, who want to share their fascinating stories with you about their time before, during and after their time in the military, so you can benefit and overcome your challenges. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be mesmerized, astounded, and entertained. Hello and welcome to another episode of Veterans to Success, the podcast where I get to speak with seemingly ordinary people with extraordinary stories. And today I've got with me Helen Valentino. Helen, how are you doing?
I'm good. Excited about being on your podcast.
Excellent. And I'm excited to have you, actually. I know you've got a great story, a fantastic story of trials, tribulations, how you get over stuff, challenges. The thing is that there's no big intro with this podcast, right? There's no fanfare for the common man, common woman, or anyone else. What we do is it's a steady reveal as we go through, and then people will know by the end of it just what an awesome person you are and have your story. So, right, let's dive straight in, because you've had a quick chat about how we go through this. So what I'd like to know is what you were doing before you joined the military, you know, from a teeny bopper, I suppose, from a youngster. What was going on in your life?
Yeah, I had a interesting and challenging childhood, shall we say. From when I was born, three of my grandparents live with us. My mum's mum and dad. One was very disabled with arthritis and was creaking, literally creaked like a door when she stood up. God love her. She was incredible, very powerful. And then my grandfather had Alzheimer's, so he was kind of a little bit away with the fairies. And then my dad's mum was actually really fit and healthy, and kind of we saw her, but she had the attic room and that was it. But I did feel blessed to have grandparents around. My dad was very sick. He got mercury poisoning at work. He was a dentist, and that he also had a lot of heart conditions, so he wasn't the nicest person to be around, let's put it that way. I think, looking back now, he probably had a lot of anger issues, a lot of unresolved trauma himself, as most of our parents do. And my mum was also a dentist. She worked part-time. But so I grew up, but by the age of about, I think I was around, the problem for me, I don't know whether it's ADHD or just because of trauma, but my memories are a bit kind of scant. And I find ages and years very difficult to remember. There's a few years in my life that I really do remember, like 389, because that was my army year of training. And 88, because I was traveling around Australia. I went to World Expo, which was in 88, was plastered everywhere, but often I get confused with dates and times. But very sadly, all my grandparents were dead by the time I was about 8. My grandma, who was bedridden with arthritis, was the last one to die. And then I guess for me, it felt like the trouble started because I had no allies at home, and my dad was actually sexually abusive. So, and as a child, we didn't have Childline in my day. I mean, I'm 56 this month.
Congratulations, 56. Well done. That's a great age.
I know, it's quite a good marker, isn't it? We didn't have Childline, didn't really have anyone to talk to. So it was very, it was difficult. And I tried to tell my mum, but I didn't really have the vocabulary. And actually, it turned out when I was older, and I spoke to my mum about it, and not until I was in my late 20s, I found out that she actually kind of knew but couldn't bring herself to believe it. Like, it was easier. It was easier to hope it's not happening than actually have to face it, because that would have had terrible consequences. But that, of course, brought another level of trauma up, that the one person in your life that you would expect to look after you, take care of you, kind of didn't. And I'd done a lot of work on healing myself from the trauma of the abuse. But it felt like I was re-traumatized, almost worse, by the fact that my mum had I don't know. Even now, I mean, I know she did the best she could with what she had, and I've come to terms with her, and we made peace. But it's still, you know, I don't know. Sadly, I don't have children of my own, not by necessary choice, but just I didn't quite find the right person.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to have children just for the sake of it, because I know, you know, the trauma that can happen. So I didn't have and also I was undiagnosed ADHD. I went to a quite elite sort of school, I suppose. It was a private school, and I went when I was 4. And I think you only had to put a round peg in a round hole and a square peg in a square hole and have a bit of common sense, which I've got bags of, but I wasn't academic. And I think my ADHD, I was
Right.
interested, but, you know, and
Now,
so, yeah, go on.
no, that's interesting that thank you very much for admitting that. And you know, as I've said pre-podcast, I'm not going to dig that deep into anything. You've already explained quite a lot. What I am interested in though is that you say that you're not academic and maybe ADHD, and I know because I've studied it quite a bit, could have had something to play in that because of your learning styles, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because my school was all about probably neuro straight. I don't think that's the word for it. I'm neuro spicy. I am neuro spicy, and I quite like that word. A lot of people don't like it, but I kind of think.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good actually.
But
Yeah.
it makes me feel kind of like, yeah, I'm a bit spicy. So, but you know, the neurotypical, that's the word I was looking for. My
Right.
brain doesn't. I'm menopausal as well, so sometimes words just elude me.
Oh, great.
But just to add that into the mix.
Yeah.
But it was very neurotypical. It was one type of learning as it was in those days. You know, it's a long time ago now. And if you didn't keep up, they didn't really care. You just got left to your own devices.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
fact,
yeah.
my English O level, the teacher threw the paper at me, not my actual O level, the mock, and said I got 25%, went home in tears. She threw the paper at me and said if I didn't have to interview this, I wouldn't bother. That was a teacher.
Oh, wow,
Great.
great.
Parents were paying for. And I went home in tears, and my mum, bless her, you know, to be fair, she got me a private English tutor, and I got a B in English. It wasn't that I'm not bright. I'm in Mensa, like I was when it happened in my 20s, sort of by accident. I've ended up in the top like 2.5% of the population.
So you're obviously thick as that teacher. She may not have used that term, but she made you feel like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I was made to feel like I was stupid at school, really stupid. So and I couldn't really, the way they taught just didn't work for me. And so I left school with 5 O levels, which I thought was so shameful because everybody had 9 A's.
Hey, you beat me. You beat me.
Well, I know, but it's so interesting because I was made to feel like I was like the stupidest person, and I said to my parents, I'm not going back to that school ever.
Yeah.
You can't make me. If you bother to pay for it, I'm not turning up. So that's the end of it. And I ended up going to boarding school, which was the mixed boarding school, which was perfect because it wasn't like some academic school. It was just a really nice school actually, and it's since been on the television. They did a whole series about it. Warminster School, absolutely lovely school, but yes, and then I came out with 2 A levels. I think I got I may only have 1 A level. I can't quite remember. I think I got a D, and I'm not sure if that's or an E, and I'm not sure if that's actually a pass. But anyway,
distinguished.
That's exactly what it was. Yes,
distinguished
rather than distinction. But yeah. So yeah, I felt like I really did feel like I was stupid. Now, when I left school.
Yeah. Now, just before we continue and start leaving that part of your life, because I don't want to dwell there too much. But what I do want to know though is, and I know, well, you've already given your age, so I'm all right with this now asking this question. When you were 8, right, and you were having an interesting relationship with your dad, what year was that? And then what year was your mum having an idea?
Oh, so I was born in 69, so
right.
I think the abuse started when I was about 8.
Yeah,
that would have been
77,
77, and went on for another good 4 years probably.
Because the reason I ask is because I wanted to get a handle on what was going on in society at that time. And
we didn't have childline. There was no, it was probably maybe another 5 or 10 years after it happened to me. There's the whole childline thing with Esther Ransom came out, and I was like, oh my God, I wish that there'd been someone I could have called, because it was just so under the carpet, and you just thought you were the only one. There was no, this hadn't happened to anyone else. It was so shameful, and the fact that I tried something. I slashed my leg with a razor blade at the age of about 9 and went to hospital, and they asked me how it happened, and it was one of those old-fashioned, like the actual razor blade,
yeah.
Because they had those screwy up razor things that your dad used to kind of do that shaving
Yeah.
with. And I said to him, "Oh, I tripped and landed on it. I had a big cut on my leg that was quite deep. Like and it wasn't, the razor blade wasn't sticking out of it. Do you know what I mean? And how would a razor blade be sticking up like that? And I mean, and no one picked up on it. There was so many opportunities to save me, if you like, or at least, and my mum, it wasn't until I was 27. I mean, my mum said she knew, she just didn't want to believe it.
And that was at the age of 27.
Yeah.
Right.
And so then I had to do that whole workaround, with that. And my mum, my mum was obviously deeply traumatized. She didn't talk about much. She wasn't very maternal in any way, to be honest with you, bless her. I mean, I remember my friend saying when we were about in our 40s, I think, she said, "Oh, my mum's coming around with chicken soup because I'm not very well." I'm like, "You're 40. Your mum's coming around with chicken soup. I didn't get chicken soup when I was in my teens or even in my, So, but I was a bit like, oh, that's what mothers do. But she was an incredibly, I try and separate my parents out into being parents, which they kind of failed quite miserably at. Bless them. They did their best. And then actual people. And my mother also, like our whole family is probably neurodivergent. My mum was super dyslexic, but never picked up. My brother is, well, he was called Asperger's when he was diagnosed, but he's on the autistic spectrum and he's got ADHD now. And he's also, there's something else he's got, I can't remember what it is. But so yeah, and he's dyslexic as well. Really severely. He went to a special boarding school for dyslexia. So my mum managed to be, she was one of the, not many women did dentistry, and certainly not with this really severe dyslexia where there was no help at all. If you were dyslexic, like me, you just got your papers scribbled through, try harder, don't reread your homework. And I would reread it, but I read it as if I thought that was right,
Yeah.
Reading it 10 times.
Reading it, I'm still reading it the same way. So what's
yeah, exactly. I read what I thought I wrote, or even if I spelt it wrong, it's because that's how I thought it was spelled. Just red marks everywhere. So my mum was quite incredible, and my dad, actually, to be fair, was a very brilliant, quite a brilliant man. I mean, his father was he helped invent the black box, but again, was a really violent, man. I think he was probably a drinker as well. And, his mum ended up having to leave and divorce him, which was kind of unheard of in that time. So she was very brave as well. But yeah, I think the dad was definitely very violent to his mum and to the kid. I think he beat both the boys up quite, a lot.
Okay.
So, they're all coming from trauma, but they didn't have what we have today. Like, it's so, we all know now that we've got to do, it's an inside job, they say, don't they? You've got to heal yourself. But I mean, I went through, all the ways of finding out what was wrong before I actually started, finding out how to work. I ended up drinking alcoholically, which is, I know pretty common for, a number of people. But so yeah, I've had to it's like a, 10 steps forward, 3 steps back, 20 forward, 5 back, 2 forward, 1 back. And, just keep going up that little hill until you kind of fake it till you make it. And then you kind of suddenly think, oh, well, I'm never going to be Buddha, but you know what? I'm really happy. I've got integrity, and I've done a lot of work on myself, like personal development and healing, and that's led into other things. So yeah, I'm sorry, I talk a lot. You'll have to.
No, fantastic. No, I'm interested because now what I'm going to do, right, is thanks for giving me an overall brief on that. And by the way, it's unbelievable, right, for me, how much, and you've obviously worked on healing and self-healing, and that's the same with what I do with neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotherapy and timeline therapy. Like, I've had, because you buddy up with people when you're learning, don't you? So you test each other out. So I've had every sort of therapy that I know tested on me. That's why I'm sort of cleansed with the PTSD that I could have had with the incident that I had 25 years ago. And then also 7 weeks ago when I was daft enough to injure my neck again. But anyway.
I know, I can't wait to get you on my podcast. I'd love to.
Coming back to you, right? I just find it humbling how objective you are. And that's probably forget academia. I'm not interested in academia because academics often common sense isn't common practice, and sometimes academics haven't got the common sense.
No.
They're absolutely brilliant and intelligent. Common sense, though, because I've seen it in the military. Yeah.
There was a gorgeous friend of ours at school, bless her, and she was the same. She was so brilliant, but she had no common sense. I don't know why they call it common sense because it's not all that common.
No. So as I say, unbelievable how objective you are with the whole younger part of your life when there was stuff going on, and then you leave. You get to the point where you say, I'm not going back to that school. I don't care how elitist it is. You're not getting me back there. And then when was it that you thought, the army's calling me?
Well, do you know what? I think this seed was planted at boarding school because we had someone come and talk to us about being an officer because it was a boarding school and they probably thought they could get a few candidates in, and I just didn't feel that was for me. I thought of being behind a desk or doing any, and it was more like It didn't feel like we were going to go out in the field and do loads of stuff. It was more you can be an officer and there'll be you'll be managing things, but I'd never even considered, even though my dad was, I think he was in the Australian Army, I'd never even considered it, not while I was alive. But and then to save up the money to go to Australia, because that was the one thing, my dad was Australian, and the one thing I wanted to do is go and see, he'd taken us out there when I was about 13 to see all our friends and family. Obviously it's a long way away, a lot of money to take family out there, and we did a 5-week trip, took us out of school when you were allowed to be taken out of school, that was and did a 5-week trip around Australia, New Zealand, Tasmania, and then I think we went to Hong Kong and Hawaii on the way.
Okay.
And we went to Disneyland, and I got my photo taken with Goofy, and I looked just like Goofy because I had great big buck teeth, big glasses. Honestly, it was hilarious. I was the most ugly child anyway, and so we so I knew I wanted to go travelling. I think I just wanted to get as far away from home as possible, to be honest with you. So I went off to Australia for a year, or under a year. I think it was about 8-9 months, to see friends and family. But I needed a job to be able to save up to actually pay for the ticket. And I was very lucky because friends and family put me up most of the way, so it didn't cost as much as it would normally when you were travelling. But people lent me cars to drive around by myself at 18. I was 18 when I went.
How cool is that?
I mean, I love my poor parents. I mean, it serves them right for what they put me through. But do you know what I mean? I know it must have been awful for them. So, no mobile phones, no nothing. If I felt like calling them from a phone box, I was still alive, with a few dollars I had, quarters or whatever. And but yes, and I needed a job, and the worst thing that I could think of was being a temp. Not being a temp, but being in an office. I'd had to stick labels on envelopes, and then put something in it, fold it for a week, and I just thought I will go crazy if I do that. And I went to the job centre, and there was this job for a care assistant in an old people's home. And I told you my grandma was disabled when I was little. She was bedridden, and I used to do her bedpans. And I thought, well, I reckon I could look after someone else's gran. It beats working in an office. So I took the job as a care assistant. Loved it. It was a psychogeriatric, so it was dementia patients. I mean, they were bonkers, but they were lovely. And then I don't know what made me put the two together, but I thought, I wonder if you can do nurse training in the army. So I started looking into it, and everyone I sort of managed to look up or read or whatever in the time, there was no internet those days, was like, oh, it's a really good training in the army. And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to apply. So I was thinking of applying to Civvy Street as well, like Bath, Bristol and Salisbury. But I applied for the army when I got back from travelling and had an interview and got offered a place, and that was that. And of course, I told my mum, oh, I'm joining the army. Any old thing to get away from home. And she was like, what if there's a war? And I'm like, don't be ridiculous. Who's going to have a war? This was 1988. I'm like, don't be so ridiculous, mother. Who's going to have
1988. All right, so I know what's coming next then.
Yeah. So I joined the army, get through my basic training, end of 88. Back into 89, start at Woolwich because we got split into two halves, and of course I'm supposed to be going home for Sunday lunch.
Oh, were you in? Was it the Queen Elizabeth?
Queen Elizabeth. Yeah.
I had my wisdom teeth out there. That explains a lot, actually. But yeah.
I probably looked after you.
No. I think they fixed the broken leg for me as well, or something. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. It was great. I loved Woolwich. It was great. but yeah, I had to ring up and say, because basically we got, after basic training in Aldershot, we got split into two groups, and half went to Woolwich and half went to Aldershot. And then you the idea was after 18 months you switch, so you do different blocks, during your training. And so because maternity we could only do at Aldershot, A&E was only at Aldershot, so there was only psych was at Woolwich, so we kind of switched. And so the Aldershot lot, half of them went to the Gulf. The Gulf War erupted, half of them went out there. The rest were quite unfortunate, really, because the hospital was mobilised. There wasn't a hospital there, so they ended up doing paperwork and kind of menial stuff. Woolwich, obviously, our training was suspended. I don't like to put the army down, but I have to say Piscopin and Brewery springs to mind when it comes to the way they dealt with the training, but maybe it was more complex than I knew. But anyway,
that's an often used phrase, that, yeah.
But yeah, so they went out, and then the tour of duty was about to change. So we got, orders that we were going to probably go to Satan to redo our MBC training, neurobiological chemical warfare thing, for people who don't know about that.
Yeah.
Nuclear biology.
Yeah, that's where you put those lovely things on, those
suits
the green suits.
I didn't think it was too bad when we did that in basic. But
well, you obviously didn't go over an assault course and running it then, because
no, the girls have to do that kind of
stuff.
That
and
was
the
a funny thing.
on.
We had the respirators while I went into the gas chamber and stuff, but I don't think we had to do too much. I think we had to maybe drink a cup of something, or I can't really remember. It's a long time ago. But the funny thing was, I mean, it's not necessarily funny, slight anecdote though, but I've been at boarding school with a couple of boys that had gone into the army as well, and they, of course, were very good friends of mine. One of them, I think, was my boyfriend at the time, and we'd been writing letters, as you did, before emails were ever invented. And he was going on these log runs, and all this, they were really beasted, as they say in the army. And so when I did basic, I was expecting that. Like, I'd psyched myself up. I'd been off traveling for a year by myself. I was kind of, 18, and no, I was 19 by the time I joined the army. And I turned 19 when I was in Australia. And and it wasn't like that. I mean, it was hard, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't, I was expecting what the boys got, and of course they're a bit gentler with the ladies. So that was quite a nice, and I was horrified though that people didn't know how to iron clothes or use a washing machine, I have to say. But, and people couldn't march. I was behind one girl, I won't name her, but she was in front of me in the parade. And she could not march. She camel marched every time. And I thought, I'm never going to get paid. Honestly, sometimes we were there for hours waiting for her to try and coordinate her arms and legs. She looked about 14, bless her. She was a ward stewardess, I think, but because we were all mushed in together to start with. But anyway, I had to ring my mum, and we were on standby. We couldn't leave the unit because we were on standby to go to Satan and redo our MBC and also have all our jabs and stuff. And I had to ring my mother and said, I'm sorry, I can't come home for Sunday lunch today. I might be going to the Gulf. I told you there'd be a war. I was like, oh, mothers are always right, aren't they? Anyway, so, but I didn't go because the airstrike started literally that day, I think, or the next day. We didn't go to Satan Camp. We didn't go anywhere. And before we knew it, it was all over, and we were all back training again. So I think at the time I was a bit disappointed because it's sort of, I didn't actually sign up to the army to go to war. I signed up to train as a nurse. I hadn't even contemplated the idea that there might be a war when I was in the army. But I think once you're in, it's that kind of solidarity, isn't it?
Yeah.
I want to support my country, and
and the adrenaline gets going, and
I was a bit disappointed we didn't go, I'll be honest. But looking back now, there's a lot of people had a lot of problems post.
Well, that's the same. I'm a little bit older than you, and when my first posting in 1981 was to Germany, and in 1982 when the Falklands started, I volunteered for the Falklands. Thankfully, I didn't go. One of the reasons being is because, as far as I'm aware, because the Cold War was big then, and no one from BAOR, except maybe specialists, went to the Falklands. All the forces were taken from the UK. Right. So I didn't go, and thankfully, because I've got friends who did go, and I know how that's affected them. So coming back to you.
It's funny you mentioned Germany though, because when I signed on the dotted line, we were doing half our training in Germany, and I was really excited about that.
Oh, right, okay.
No, they started closing. When I joined, they'd started closing some of the hospitals. It was sort of the start of the end, I think.
Was that where were you at? Munster or
Rintown? We should have been to
Rintown, yeah, I know. Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I didn't go, and at the time I was very disappointed, but now I'm very grateful because there's been all kinds of problems and stuff, and so so we carried on our training, but because of the war erupting and all the mess with all the training, I ended up going into Civvy Street to do, still in the army, but they
Yeah.
sent us out to civilian hospitals to do. I went to Lewisham actually. I did 3 blocks in Lewisham. I did my A&E in Lewisham. I did my rehab in Lewisham, and I did my management block in Lewisham.
Well, that give you a
And
good grounding then.
well, do you know what was really fascinating is I'd never really been to hospital as a kid, so I didn't really know anything about how it all worked. And in the army, of course, you have sisters on the ward, and you can be a sister after a year post-reg. And people
Yeah.
come in with S-type engagements, they've done their thing, and who wouldn't? I mean, if the money's good, you get to be in the officer's mess. Why wouldn't you go for a
Yeah.
commission after a year if you've got the brains and they accept you? And but I suddenly realised that most wards in the real world don't actually have 3, 4 sisters on them sitting in the office and a few people and the students doing the work. They have one sister who's actually out on the ward doing a lot of the work. And I planned to go for commission, stay in the army, and I suddenly had this kind of wake up call, like, I'm going to be stuck in there forever if I do that, because I'm not going to be able to go from 1 year post-reg to being a sister and then be a sister, even if it's only for 3 or 4 years, and then come out of the army and then somehow go back into the NHS. So, I mean, I know some people who, a friend of mine that I trained with, she came out as a major and she's now doing, in fact, she might be great to have on your podcast.
Very good. Yeah.
She's doing, she's got a skin kind of and cosmetic. She's a nurse. Obviously, she's also a nurse. And, Amo, her name is. And, she, yeah, she's got her own business doing skincare and, she does digital Botox and all
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And she's done really well.
Good. So back
She
to
came
you
out as a
then.
major.
So what?
Sorry?
Back to you. Back to you. You were
Yeah,
thinking that
sorry.
you were going to take the commission, and
Yeah, no, that didn't happen.
uh,
And I thought I've got to get out. I failed my finals the first time because exams for me are just a nightmare with the ADHD, and of course there's no allowances for anything. I got really lucky. I think I probably would never have passed if I hadn't got really lucky. I think all those spirits were looking down on me. I got a 50% question. Normally the questions are done into bits and bobs, and this was like the whole question was just a half of the marks, and it was all about A&E and what you did in A&E. Now, because
well,
I'd lived and breathed it at Lewisham, because we don't have arrests really at Woolwich. I saw one arrest, and thank God it was after I'd done my my
yeah.
emergency block, because no one in the whole ward had a clue, and I didn't go down very well. That I was a student, I don't think I'd even qualified, and I was having to tell the sisters what to do because it was life and death,
Good
and
girl. Well done.
didn't go down very, no, it didn't go down very well. But anyway, I was a bit of a rebel, so I think being a bit of a rebel and ADHD, I think I'm a bit Marmite. You either love me or you hate me.
Yeah. And well, it's interesting you say about ADHD, because a lot now, I think neurodiversity is recognised, and you get more time for exams. They look at things. So it must have been pretty tough for you at the time.
Yeah, and I think it was because the learning style wasn't, and revising, like I don't really retain. The thing for me is, if I know something, if it makes sense to me, if I can figure it out and understand it, I don't have to revise it
Yeah, yeah,
because it's just obvious. Do you know what I mean? It's just there in my head forever.
yeah,
It's when you have to remember like random facts, they just go in my head and out there. My brain's like, no capacity for that. That's not necessary. Just buy. And so trying to revise, it would be like cramming. That's the only time I've ever drunk coffee. And I hate coffee. So I'd have 3, like those. Do you remember Coffee Mate?
yeah. Oh, yes, I do.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
I'd have a real, no, we had no energy drinks in my days, no Pro Plus or anything like that. It was coffee with 3 spoons of Coffee Mate in it and 3 tablespoons of sugar, just so I could get it down to stay awake. Because if I crammed the night before, there was a good chance that if I was lucky, whatever was in my brain would stay there for 24 hours. But
Yeah,
after that, it was just bye, I don't need you, see ya.
yeah.
And so I really struggled. But this particular question was incredible, because it was like, tell us what you would do in an emergency situation, 50% of your marks. And because I was there doing it every day, I didn't have to even think about it. I was like, oh my God, this is a gift. And just wrote, and I passed. So that was a real blessing. But that was when I'd already had to give my notice in before I took my second. I literally took because you have to give a year's notice.
Yes,
God,
that's right.
that's such
You
a
do.
long time when you know
Yeah,
you're out as
yeah.
well, you know.
And you don't necessarily get the best jobs, do you? Once they know that you're
No,
on your way out.
I
Yeah.
got a ward move, but that wasn't because I was leaving. That was because the lady who I showed up in the cardiac arrest moment had it in for me, and then I got stuck in an avalanche in France, and I was late back off leave, even though I'd rung the hospital and told them, and they were. She was trying to get me. She tried to get me charged for everything.
Oh, hey, flipping it. That's interesting because I had a similar incident with my staff sergeant, something like that. Yeah.
Well, it was invalid, and it was all over. I mean, it wasn't just a small avalanche. It was in the Telegraph, and it was in the Times. It was no mobile phones in those days. It was a payphone. I'd gathered every friend I knew. I'd begged on the streets to get money to put into a payphone in the Alps. Like we couldn't even. At one point, I had to have my foot on the brake. The bloke I was with had put a stake through his hand and couldn't drive. He'd slipped in the snow and landed under the snow. There was his big
Ouch.
wooden bike. So I was driving his car, slick tires. I think we had. I don't even think we had snow chains. But at one point, I remember having to. I shouldn't say this one probably, but we out of the side of the car while my foot was on the brake to prevent us, because even the handbrake on was the car was just sliding.
Hey, that's what I call multitasking there.
Yeah. And so anyway, I can't remember where I was now.
Right, well, you said that you got back late and you were falling out with
so
your.
I payphone, but I was running out of money, and no one was answering on the front desk because it was Christmas,
Yeah.
and so in the end, I thought the best I can do is ring my mum and tell her to ring them because I'm going to run out of money. So I rang my mum and said, "You're going to have to ring the front desk. This is what you need to do. You know, tell them that I have got no more money and there's only one payphone and it's miles away. And I will get in touch as soon as I possibly can. But I'm stuck on a." She's, "Oh, it's in the papers. It's all over the telly. Oh, you're in that avalanche." Yes, mum, I'm in that avalanche. Anyway. So I got back to the ward, and it was like she just so had it in for me, and I literally had not slept all night, and I was going on to a night, and they said, "Whatever you do, don't let Private Murfield sleep on this shift," because quite often if it was quiet and over Christmas, not many staff and patients. So the poor person was on. She said, "Oh, I'm so sorry, but I daren't let you. I'd really want to let you lie down because you're obviously exhausted." I mean, I probably was not even fit for duty, to be fair, because I hadn't, and it wasn't my own choice. Like I wouldn't have chosen that. And then and had to go back to my quarters and whatever, but and then she tried to charge me for something else, and she'd made a mistake, but obviously you just pass it down the line in the army, don't you? So she tried to charge me with that, and it was just before I got qualified. I hadn't got my PIN number, and I rang the RCN and said, "I don't think that this is my responsibility," and I dared to, because everyone else was like, "You take a charge or you lose your days off." And I hadn't had a weekend off in weeks, and I was like, "I'm not losing my weekend off, and I don't really want to charge, even though I'm leaving." Do you know what I mean? I don't really want to charge on my record. So I rang the RCN and said, "Can they do this? I mean, I'm in the army, so they probably can, but can they?" And they're like, "No, they can't." And so all up to Major Lequelinek's office, the HR guy, and I told him, and he was like, and I told him all the history behind it as well. He was like, "Don't worry." And then I went in to see the matron of the whole hospital, terrified, and she said, "Well, we can't take any days off you, and we can't charge you, but we're going to give you a ward move." And I was like, "Oh my God, thank you so much." And that's obviously what she needed to hear. Yeah, woohoo! Now I don't have to work with Captain XYZ. And then she sort of thought she was being really smug, because she said to me, "Yes, well, you're going to Ward 2, which was the rehab ward with all the stroke,
Yes.
spinal injuries. I loved rehab, and it was Major Lequelinek, and she was it was Major Lafferty. She was so lovely. She was the one that gave me permission to go skiing at the last minute. I was like, "Oh my God, that's my favourite ward. Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm so grateful." But Major Lequelinek, who was the HR guy, he gave me the most glowing reference, bless him. So that was all good. I seem to get off quite lightly.
Well, that's
I got
brilliant.
suspended from school, and they forgot to put that on my record.
Yeah, well, the thing is that you were deserving, really, even though you fell out with a few people. And to give you some time to process what you've said, I remember that way back in the 80s, mid-80s, I'd like you mess around with your girlfriend, and I don't mean in that way. Well, not your girlfriend, but your partner. Yeah. And I just put it between my legs and just squeeze my legs together. And I was worked in the gym, so I was strong. And it was only mucking about, but I thought I'd broken a rib. So I took her to hospital, A&E, and I didn't get out till 4 o'clock in the morning. It was Monday morning. So as I'm driving down back to Kent from because I was at Chattendale Barracks in Rochester, Kent.
Yeah.
We're driving down from Liverpool Hospital, and bang on 7:45, I phoned the squadron, spoke to my squadron sergeant major, Sid Hoyle. What a bloke he was. He was absolutely brilliant. I said, excuse me, sir, it's Colin O'Connor here. I'm going to be back late. And I explained why. He says, oh, no problems. Just come in, check in when you get here. Right. What happened was, by the time between me making that call and getting down there, he went on a course away from the squadron, didn't pass on the message. When I got in, I was in big trouble. My staff sergeant didn't believe me, put me on a fizzer, on a charge. And I said, come on. He says, no, you're absent from place of duty. I said, I've never been absent from place of duty. Staff, and I explained. He said, no, and Sid Hoyle's away for the next 2 weeks. So anyway, they charged me, the acting sergeant major. The OC said, do you accept my award? I mean, how daft the questions that you don't even know what they're going to give you. Do you accept my award? That's not, well, if I get bussed just before I get out, because I gave them a 12 months notice, then I won't get exemplary service. So I said, no, sir, I don't. And the look, because then you have to go for court martial then, don't you? And the sergeant major said, left, right, come back out, O'Connor. So they took me out, Colonel O'Connor, so they took me out. I said, I'm not accepting it, because if I get bust, right, my record's tarnished. He said, you're not going to get bust, just go back and accept it. And this was 1987, 86. They find me, what was it? I can't remember whether it was £100 or £200, which is a lot of money anyway.
It's a lot of money, and in those days,
yeah. And then he said, and you've got 5 days guard duty. You're guard commander for 5 days. You're not going home on leave. I thought, nice one. So that was my incident of how, once you sign off, things can happen. So coming back to you, then you've got the Ward 2 rehab. You're looking after people's spinal injuries, which I know a lot about, and how important and intense that work can be. So what was going on in your mind then?
Well, I think I knew I was leaving, but I actually loved the work, and we had. I mean, they were smallish. I mean, I guess they were kind of smallish wards, but we never had more than probably 3 or 4 really intense patients on the ward, like spinal injuries or head injuries. My best time, actually. Well, I say my best time. I really enjoyed most of it, but when the golf was on, I was in theatres.
Right.
I love theatre. I love theatre. Theatre and midwifery, my 2 favourite.
So what sort of stuff did you get up to in theatre? What would you do?
Well, to be fair, when the Gulf War was on, quite a lot of the time we spent playing rummy or Sergeant Major or all kind of card games, because what they would Kazibac people in, but they had to keep the theatres free for the Kazibaks. So it would be quiet 1 minute, and then it was all hell broke loose. We had 4 theatres in Woolwich.
So that must have been pretty intense then, because I know you just gloss over it. That must have been a pretty intense time then.
Yeah, I mean, in the golf, I don't know. There's something about that pulling together. You know, when the whole. There's one of the things that's really special about the army is the camaraderie with your peers.
Yeah.
And even in like, especially in the hospital, like when you're in theatres, because we saw all kinds of stuff, and you've got to have a bit of a stomach for it, to be fair. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but you really pulled together, and it was a real team. And there was a lot of joking, backslapping. There was a lot of misogyny, I'll be honest with you, and like rude comment, like not rude comments, but
but it's close to the mark. It's not PC.
Yeah, exactly. They wouldn't get away with it today, but we just took it all in our stride because we didn't know any better. Do you know what I mean? I mean, everyone was like misogynistic, and a lot of them were racist in those days, and thought that, didn't. To be fair, it's not okay, but most of them didn't even realise, I think, what they were saying. It was just sort of inbred into. I mean, even if you look at the comedy in those days when I was growing up, got Benny Hill and all kinds, running around like, it was real slapstick, and it doesn't mean it's okay, but I don't think it was malicious. Do you know what I mean? It was just, that's how it was. And so, and there was quite a lot of sexism, but I think as well, you kind of toughen up a bit. I think you either toughen up or you fall apart. And I think that there was a lot of both. And I guess maybe I was just lucky, that I'd had a brother, I'd had a pretty challenging upbringing, and if I wasn't, falling apart by now, I certainly wasn't going to let those focus.
And you've used that word a few times now. Yeah, you've used that word a few times. Lucky. I look at luck as labour under correct knowledge, labour under correct knowledge, and
Oh, clever! I love an acronym.
yeah, and I do too. Well, there's loads of them in the army, isn't there? And the thing is that I think that a lot of it is about attitude as well and how you can get through it. Because I remember some interesting episodes with people, and I suppose it'd be called bullying now. And back then it was character building.
Yeah, it's amazing how we go. I know it does. Yeah, it does make me laugh. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my mum used to say that to me.
But sometimes it kills you, right?
Yeah. It kills you emotionally, and then you get over it. Like we used to say in the engineers, build a bridge and get over it, mate.
Yeah.
So what? So now you're winding down with your career. What are you thinking when you're coming out? Because you've had a tough time. You've had misogynistic behaviour. You've probably glossed over a lot of stuff that nowadays would be not only frowned upon, it would be probably taken action against. And you're thinking, stuff this for a game of soldiers, literally. And what you thinking now?
Well, I think I just knew that I couldn't be in the army, and I think I'm a bit of a chance, a bit of a fly by the seat of your pants kind of thing. I didn't really know what I was going to do with my nursing. I knew that I could be an agency nurse because they get paid reasonably well, and you can kind of try out different places. And I knew by the time I left the army, I knew I wanted to do a diploma in complementary therapies. I saw a lot of good stuff going on in the healthcare, and the army probably, really they were on it in many ways. In some ways they were a bit behind, or a bit like misogynistic or old-fashioned, I suppose. But the surgeons and stuff were second to none. I mean, they were excellent. But I just sort of felt more in terms of the medical side that we kind of just kept putting sticky plasters on people, and when like psychiatric block or medical block, the same people coming in with the same things. And I think I was just sort of, I think there's something more, and I don't even know. We had a civilian psych teacher who did our mental health block. She was one of our, I think she was one of our whole tutors. She was a she was in the psych. She was a psychologist, I think, or she might be a psychiatrist. Anyway, she was mental health, and she was one of our tutors. And I don't know, I think she was only in a couple of blocks, but she gave me this book to read. My dad, actually, what happened was my dad had another heart attack, and I got called into the office because I'd had a couple of sort of things happen, family tragedies really, while I was in the army. When I was in basic, my mother turned up one day, and I was like, oh crap, I must be in real trouble. Like, shit, what have I done? I don't think I've done anything. I mean, I even didn't get re-inspected, re-inspection today, and then I went in, and what happened is my cousin had a schizophrenic episode, and he's gone home from college, university. His mum was in the house, and he didn't recognise her as his mum, thought it was an invader, and so tried to protect the family home by getting her out. She'd fallen downstairs and fell unconscious and never regained recovery, never recovered. So my mum was there to tell me that my cousin was in prison, been arrested or whatever, and my aunt was in a coma and probably wouldn't recover. So anyway, my mum came all the way to tell me that. I don't know why she did, but she did. So anyway, then this psych tutor wanted a word with me when I was in my training. I think it was just before I can't remember. I think we were in my first block. Anyway, she said, and I said, is everything okay? Thinking, oh God, what have I done this time? Because I was always in trouble. And she said, I've got some, sad news for you. And I was like, oh, my dad dead? She was like, no, he's had another heart attack. I said, oh, like that. And so she was like, you don't seem too upset. I'm like, I'm not upset. I was hoping maybe, that was his time. And she was like, oh, and then we had this talk, and she was really lovely. And she said, I've got two books I want you to read. And one was this book called Women Who Love Too Much by Robin Norwood. And I'm sure it's as good today as it was when I read it like 30 years ago or whatever. And the other one, How to Give Up Smoking the Easy Way by Alan Carr. Because I smoked like a fish, drank like a fish, smoked like a trooper. And she was right. Both books were incredible. I stopped smoking, of course. In the book, it says never have another cigarette. That was my mistake. And then I carried on smoking for about another 20 years. But the book about not, Robin Hood, that set me on a path to
Mm.
self-improvement. And I was like, oh my God, I can see, because she was talking about childhood patterns and how people pleasing and all that shit. And that started me on my self-discovery. Of course, normally in one book, it tells you about another book or something else that you kind of, and it's just that chain, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I'd discovered complementary therapies. Like I'd heard about now aromatherapy, reflexology, and a chance encounter talking to my mother about it. She said, "Oh, my nurse, one of my the temporary nurses, dental nurses, oh, she's just done a course in that reflexology at this place in Dorking. I'll get the prospectus." So she got me, and they did a full year diploma in complementary therapy. So I thought that's what I'm going to do,
Wow.
and I carried on doing agency work. Through the whole year, I sold my saxophone to pay for one term. I got a grant from Barnes. I was living with this bloke that I went skiing with at that time. He lived in Barnes, and they gave me a year's money for one term, and then I had to save up the rest. But I was still nursing. I ended up in the community, loved district nursing. Well, it was community nursing, really. You have to do an extra qualification to become a district nurse, but it was working on the community with the district nurses. And I absolutely loved it. I loved going in people's homes, and decided that I wanted to try and help the elderly, who I think I still had that real yearning, with my grandma and looking after people in care, to really support the elderly. Because at the time, HIV was the start of the HIV epidemic.
Right.
So we were
Okay.
going into a lot of HIV, people's homes, like looking after them. It was heartbreaking. And we did all sorts of stuff, kidney dialysis on the community, all kinds of. I absolutely loved it. And I wanted to get complementary therapies onto community. And the HIV and the cancer patients had lots of money being pumped into them, but the elderly got nothing. And we would see people sabotaging wounds, like be like, "Oh, well, a couple more visits and your ulcer will be healed." And then you go down next time, the bandages are off, the ulcers, and they've just picked at their
Yeah.
so that they could have someone come back.
Oh.
And I'm like, well, why are we wasting nursing resources when we could train someone to go in and do a hand massage or a leg massage or something that would improve circulation, probably help them sleep a bit better, cost next to nothing compared to what it costs for a nurse to go in and dress a bandaged leg for 6
Yeah.
weeks while it heals. Anyway, it turns out that they'd overspent. There was a first time, but the people didn't even know they had a budget at this point. Like, budgets weren't a thing,
No.
Even with the senior people in the NHS, no one knew they had a budget. Everyone just bought what they needed, and the money just came from somewhere. And my I grade, who was the head of the unit in Wandsworth, where I was at Balham Health Centre, she was the head of the health centre there for the nursing staff. She was like, "Helen, I've never had this before," because she said, "We'll just write a project plan and I'll get money and we'll pay you to do that. It'll be great. This would be a great project." And she came back and said, "Helen, I'm really sorry, but they've overspent by like £11 million. We didn't even know we're on a budget. We've managed to overspend by 11."
Just 11 million. That's all right.
She said, "I don't know what we're going to do. We can't let this rest." And she'd been a case study of mine, and I'd cured her from whatever it was that she had, or she'd cured herself basically, but I'd helped her along the way. And then she used to send me all the people from HR who were really ill and get me to go and see them to get them well again. When normal medicine wasn't working, all the people that were off sick and stuff, or having really difficult time with absences and stuff. And so we ended up tipping along a bit anyway. Long story short, they put some bloke who'd had no experience in complementary therapies in charge of complementary therapies for the whole of the Wandsworth community.
Oh, that was a wise move, eh?
Yeah, he did have a qualification. It was in spa bars in 1974 in Sweden. He started talking to me about double-blind trials. I said, "How do you expect to do a double-blind trial on a massage? Like, you can't tell someone, I'll pretend I'm not massaging you, don't we know?" Anyway, we won't go there. So anyway, he got no lottery funding. So then I had to do some awful research project. No, not project, like a course in research. It was like the most mind-numbingly boring for an ADHD person thing you can ever imagine. And then she was leaving, and I went to a job centre with a friend who was on the course, who was clearly not going to do his case study, so couldn't practice as a nutritionist. And he drove me so crazy. Literally every job I said, "Oh, this looks interesting." He was like, "No, I can't do that because of this. Can't do that because of this." So in the end I said, "Well, you don't want a job, do you? I don't know why I bothered to waste my day off with you coming to find a job." And off I stopped, realising that then he'd driven there and I couldn't really get home without him. And so I went and had a look at all these boards, and right in the middle was a job for a nurse in an insurance company.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't the job that interested me. It was the fact the salary was way bigger than what I was on. But I thought, well, let me see what this is all about. So I got immediately told off for taking the piece of paper off the board, because the last time I'd been in a job centre before that was when I got the job as a care assistant. And went up to the lady anyway, ended up talking to this guy. I was fascinated what they were doing. It kind of slightly more aligned with what my complementary therapy thing, but they were trying to, because the NHS was, even in those days.
And what year was this, by the way?
Oh Christ! So, okay, so I left. I was in the army for 5 years. I joined 80. So, well, 5 years from 389. So, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 90. We're talking about 94-ish, something like that. I went in and asked, because in nursing you can go and have what's called an informal visit. So you can go and visit the ward, talk to the sister, find out a bit about the job, and then apply. And then you've got a short window to apply. Then they look through all the applications. If you're lucky, you might get an interview. Then you'll call back for a second interview. And then if you're really lucky, you get the job. So I rang them. I said to them, well, could I come in for an informal visit? And not ever being in the real world. And so he said, oh, yeah, sure. So I came in to have a chat with this lovely guy, Arthur Lightbody, and talked about it. And I'm like, this is fascinating. So what they're doing is they realise that the NHS can't cope with musculoskeletal problems and some other, rehab, really. They don't do rehab. They do emergency quite well, and the rest of it's a bit shit. And so they were like, we're losing money because of the NHS. And the Americans had come over, because it was an American company, it was AIG. And they were like...
Oh, AIG, know them well. Yeah.
That was before they went...
Yeah.
No one had ever heard of them before. This was before they sponsored the football and had gone nearly, everything went a bit wrong, and they had to get bailed out. But yeah, so I met with Hank actually on a visit. But anyway, basically he'd come over to England and said, "Why haven't you got a nurse in this department?" And they were like, "Oh." Took that to mean that they could recruit one, because headcount was a real thing in those days. And so they only put it in the job centre. So I kind of feel fate has had a hand in every single one of my moves. They only put it in the job centre while they tried to figure out where the hell you would advertise for a nurse. And I was only in the job centre because I was with my friend. So It wasn't really, we shouldn't...
Well, kismet,
I do believe in sort of fate, and, universe has got your back and all that. So, yeah, so basically, I sort of, at the end of this incredible chat, he said, right, so what we've decided is we're going to pay for some rehab to get these people well, so they're not off work for so long, and by the time they get any help, they're too late to help. We're going to put some money in, and I'm like, I want to be in on this. This sounds great. So I said to him, so when's the closing date for the applications? And he looked at me as if I'd grown a second head and said, I've no idea what you're talking about. And I'm like, when do you sort of stop letting people apply and then start interviewing? He said, well, I thought this was an interview. He said, and if you want the job, it's yours. I was like, okay, yes, thanks. So I went back to the health centre, and my boss had literally resigned 2 days before me. And I said, oh my God, I've got a job. And so she helped me. She said, well, ask for more money. Tell them you've got to add in your hosing allowance and all that sort of thing. So anyway, I ended up working for AIG, setting up, well, I worked in their insurance sort of claims department for a bit, but I was like, we can't be doing this. We need to be separate.
How long did you work for AIG for?
Well, that's another story, isn't it? I think it was 3 years, because I resigned every year because I couldn't get the head count I wanted.
Isn't that interesting? Because when I had my incident on selection with the SAS, well, fortunately, because at the time I was an independent financial advisor, and as you know, I still do that now. I'm still a financial advisor. The week before, I think it was, or maybe 2 weeks, talk about timing, I started, you see, because you can imagine that no insurance company is going to give income protection cover for someone who's doing bomb disposal or The fact is, though, legally as well, it was nothing illegal. There was a group plan where they don't ask what your hobbies are, because remember, I was in the TA then.
Yeah.
I joined it, which saved my bacon when I had my injury, because then I dealt with a nurse who was absolutely brilliant on getting me back to work, and made sure that I had special chair, office chair, so it supported me, arms that went up and down to make sure that I wasn't crunching my shoulders. So what you do was brilliant.
Well, I had a slightly different role, but nurses had been in income protection for a while, because that's what it was called. I ended up in the liability market, which is very different. So that was employer's liability, public liability, and motor.
Got you.
So, accidents at work or in a car or in a public place. So I was new. There hadn't really been none of the insurance companies. I was just in the right place at the right time. I was the first medical nurse really in the liability. Income protection had nurses for a while. They were pretty savvy, but the liability people hadn't. And it was because in America they have case managers, and this was when case management started really in the
Yeah.
UK. And so, but I was really successful. I mean, in a way, I was a bit of an entrepreneur in their company, and so I would be out selling with the underwriters to all these employers, saying they were like, "You're just trying to rush our people back to work," and I said, "No, they're not. If people don't go back to work safely and well, it causes them all kinds of problems, stress,
Yeah.
depression, anxiety, and more health problems. What we're trying to do, and I'm here to manage these guys to make sure they're not rushing anyone back to work, but I can only advocate for a safe, healthy return to work at the right time with the right support." And so I was selling really well with the underwriters because people believed me because I was telling the truth. And I think, so the more I sold, the more work we got and the
Yeah.
more staff I needed. But they tied me down to the headcount in the in the claims department. So I got headhunted. I got headhunted within my first year, which was quite a thrill, as you can imagine,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
being a
Yeah.
nurse, you don't ever do things like that. So I was like, oh, and then I had sort of said, oh, I've got to leave. I handed my notice in. He was like, why are you leaving? I said, well, because someone else wants to employ me and they're going to offer me a lot more than you're offering me. Well, okay, we'll match it and increase it. And I was like, oh, that was easy. That saved me having to relocate to Birmingham. So anyway, I got the hang of this, how it worked. Like it was a golden handcuffs kind of, And so the next year I needed more staff. I'm like, right, well, I'm not getting very far by asking nicely. Hello, I need more staff. I'm selling all this stuff for you. I'm making you profit. By this time, I'd set up a subsidiary of AIG because I didn't want to be a nurse in the insurance claims department. I wanted my own little area, different building, and not tied to the claims department. But of course, I was 28 and they saw me as little nursey. They didn't give me any credibility because it was all men, and they'd already designed a nurse's uniform for me apparently when I joined. But anyway, those were the days when you could probably get away with that.
Yeah.
And having come from the army, it didn't even faze me. It just went straight over my head. I'm like, oh right, yeah, boys, making up dresses for girls, anyway. So yeah, and so I said, look, I'm selling all this business and I'm making you money because I'm charging you for the services I'm providing, and I'm still saving you 5% on your claims cost because I'm doing such a good job, but I can't do it without any staff. So could I have some staff? Well, it's not really in the claims. I'm like, well, okay, here's my notice. They're like, oh, well, what will it take to keep you? I'm like, the 7 head counts that I've got waiting to be signed off. And I said, I don't want you to think that I'm resigning over money. I'm resigning because I can't do my job properly because you won't let me.
Yeah.
So I said that to them. I said, I'm not going to ask for pay rise, even though I know I can and you'd have to pay me. I do want some shares, but I'll wait till Christmas and make sure that what I get at Christmas is, makes me want to stay another year. Anyway, it didn't. And I was back in the same position, waiting for all these headcounts to be signed off the following year. And I just thought, do you know what? I'm going to do this myself. I'm sick of being in this boys' club. They've all got their golden handcuffs on. No one's prepared to rock the boat. No one's prepared to sort of say, and because I'm a woman in a man's world, because insurance was very male driven then.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember.
They were like, oh, she's a bit big for her boots, isn't she? So I said bye, and they're like, what will it take to keep you? And I was on a month's notice. I was the managing director of a subsidiary of AIG in rehab with 15 staff, making money and saving them money. But I wasn't actually. I was managing director in title, no,
Yeah.
it wasn't really official in any way. And I was still on a month's notice. So I said, well, I'm not staying. I've given you 2 chances. Now, 3 strikes and you're out, mate, And literally 2 weeks, they were still trying to talk me into staying. We'll go into Europe. Well, you could be head of the European division. I'm like, what part of I can't do my job properly do you not understand? I don't want more money and I don't want to go to freaking Europe. I want you to let me run my business properly. And because you won't, I'm going to do it myself. So I left. Bless them, they were without an MD. They had the boss's next door neighbour, who was an interim, came in a couple of days a week to try and hold the fort. Anyway, I just thought, well, I'm going to go and raise some money. I've heard now of this venture capital stuff you can get. This time I'm like 29, 30, and I heard of this venture capital. And I'd won a couple of awards. I'd won a Young Achiever of the Year award for all the work I'd done in rehab, and we'd won a couple of awards as a team, like for doing all this rehab and getting people back to work, and doing a great job. And so I just thought, well, I think I did a few sums back of the envelope. Need about £1 million. Turns out £1 million is actually a very difficult amount to get. Everyone wants to give you 500,000. Everyone wants to give you 5 million. 1 million in the middle, it's kind of too much for the little investors, too little for the big boys. The guys from Benji wanted me to buy another. They were really keen. Wanted me to buy a company so that I could get up to their 5 million. And I thought, but I'm the first person to do this. I don't want to buy a company that's either failing that I've got to turn around before I do what I want to do, or that's something else that is just going to distract me from my job. Like, there isn't another company to buy. There was a few really amazing boutique case management companies that worked with the catastrophically injured, but I was more interested in helping the big volume of people that had whips and trips, we used to call them, like whiplash injuries, trips and falls, broken bones that they weren't getting properly looked after, people languishing at home, no one even calling them to see if they were okay. I mean, it was just shocking. So eventually I found someone. It took me a year. I remortgaged my house, learned how to use Excel. Well, actually,
I bet that was exciting.
I could use Excel, but I couldn't link the bloody sheets. That was a whole new game changer for me. Like, I didn't realize you could link the sheets, put like something from this sheet into that. Oh my god. Anyway, cut a long story short, I got funding. I got funding from a company who was in between me and 3i, and we set up HML, which is still going today. In fact, funnily enough, I just had a meeting today with the managing director, the new managing director, not new, there's been lots of ones between me and them. And it was called Health and Case Management. It just goes by its initials now, but it is no coincidence that my initials are Helen Claire Murfield, or they were before I changed my name. So anyway, but it was funny because he was on the video, cool, because I've got a non-exec role. I have one, and I might take on a second if I find the right company, but I don't want to do it just for the sake of it. It has to be. And this company that I am a non-exec for is a care company that are revolutionising care. The guy reminds me of me at the same age when I was setting up HTML. I just love him. He's a young Asian guy, Akshay, and his parents were in care, like run care agencies, and at 16 they're like, right, you've got to come and understand the family business. He's like, 16-year-old boy, I don't want to do that. And they were like, tough, and so good Indian boy, you just do as you're told, don't you? And he absolutely loved it. His brother ended up a doctor. He ended up a twin brother, identical twins.
Right.
His brother ended up a doctor. He didn't really have the bedside manner to be, in care. And actually ended up loving it, and is set up, could see all the pitfalls. Really, really bright entrepreneur. They're not paying these people enough. Let's pay them twice as much, but let's use technology, which no one seems to know about in the care industry, to save us some money. So yeah, anyway, I love him. So we ended up on a call today. So that was really funny.
Wow, fantastic.
So founder and new, chief exec. So that was really sweet. But anyway, another story.
So you set up this company, then you raised the capital, which is quite a few quid by the sounds of it.
We did really well. We got from nothing to 4 million in 3 years. We were profitable. But I'm afraid there's a bit of a sad ending to this story as well.
Right.
Because there was 3i changed their funding strategy basically, and we were too small. We'd just got an acquisition pot. I was so excited. I was like riding this wave, and we'd won a few more awards because we were the first people doing this, and we'd grown to 110 people. And we had some cracking clients, and yeah, it was really exciting. And then we'd deliberately gone out of profit with some investment to build enough infrastructure to start doing acquisitions. And I was really excited, and I had a couple of people in mind. I've been talking to them like, would you come and join us, and I was about to sign heads of terms with the first company, and my chairman turned up in Croydon, which it was only ever came for board meetings, and unannounced. And I was like, oh, hello, what are you doing here? And he was like, I've come to the board and I've got to have a talk with you. And I was thinking again, oh shit, it's imposter syndrome. I mean, I had such bad imposter syndrome when I was running that business, because I just thought, I just winging it. And the thing is, because I've got a lot of common sense, and I am quite bright, just not academic in that sense. Like studying, not for me. Studying, I do study because I've studied loads of things, but more hands-on, practical stuff, rather than writing about it. My best is doing a master's, and I'm like, oh, I just can't even begin to think that how awful that would be. But anything practical, I can't stop learning. I mean, it's ridiculous all the things that I've got qualifications in around the complementary therapies thing, because I just like, that looks really fun, new and exciting. Let me learn that. But anyway.
So he said, I want a word. So what was going on?
I want a word, he said. And he said, we're being put up for sale. And I'm like, well, we can't be put up for sale now. We've got to get rid of all the infrastructure so we're profitable again, so we can get some more money for the business, because we don't want to sell it now. It's really not the great time. No, it's fire sale. Got to sell it now. I said, well, I've promised Capita first dibs, so I need to go and let the MD know, blah, blah, blah. And so Capita offered us £6 million. I nearly wet myself. I was like, yes, please, now, let's do it. And they said no. Big boys, greedy, don't know. Can't fathom it out, but they turned it down. I think they wanted 8 million rather than 6 million. But of course, we were hemorrhaging cash because we'd put all this stuff, and now we weren't doing acquisitions, and well, it was a disaster. And so we're hemorrhaging cash every month, doing our best to kind of stem the flow as best we can. But we couldn't take out the people because we're in the middle of a sale process. You're not allowed to make it once you've done that in terms of sale. You can't change the thing. It was just, I just don't know where these people's heads were at. I really, and I'm again young woman. What does she know? So anyway, 18 months later, I bought the company for £1, but of course there was a great big debt that I were owed, and I didn't have a bean because I'd put every penny, remortgaged my house to get the business off the ground in the first place. And they'd been a bit mean with the whole bonus thing as well, actually. Despite getting to 4 million in 3 years and being in profit, I didn't get one bonus. But anyway, that's another story. So that was catastrophic. But I bounced back mostly, although the person that took over at that point wasn't my cup of tea.
Did you actually pull the reins in and get it back to profitability, or did it just go?
No, we did, and it's still going today, but unfortunately...
Because you mentioned it was still going today,
we did, and it's super successful. It's now one of the largest case management companies in the UK.
Well, congratulations.
They've just done another acquisition, actually, but the sad thing was that the person that I got in to fund was a Jekyll and Hyde character, and he was all sweetness and light while he was trying to get his hands on my business, because he had the funds to pay off the debts and keep it going while we took all the bits out that we didn't need, and but sadly he wanted a man in my job. And actually even managed to, he was the most misogynist person I've ever, he literally thought women should be at the sink, and what was I doing running a business, and couldn't he find me another little job somewhere where I'd be a bit more, but he actually, in front of a boardroom full of people, said to one of the consultants that he'd brought in for other boys club reasons, I've been telling you I want you to be the chief executive of this business for the last 8 months. I was like, oh, that's news to me, thanks. Okay. But by this point, I was at my wit's end. That's when I'd started drinking. And I'd lost the will to even, I couldn't work with it. He'd got rid of all my management team, but instead of being above board, he was the kind of person that made people's lives so much hell that they had to resign so he didn't have to pay them off.
Right.
And it was just really sad, and I had to walk away.
And what year was that?
Oh God, I'm gonna have to add up all the years now. So I left. Where did we get to when I started the business?
You got
so probably 19, what year were we in?
You got 1994, and then
there was probably like 5 or 6.
Year 2000.
Yeah, somewhere. I didn't know, because I didn't leave until I was 16. 50, I left about 13 years ago, so let's work back that way, because I was still there when I got divorced. 2012 something like that. I mean, as I said, I actually cannot remember dates. I find it impossible to keep dates in my head, but so it happened quite soon after I met my ex-partner, and that was 16 years ago, so probably 14 years ago, something like that. And then the wheels fell off, and I couldn't align. I couldn't work for a company, even though felt like it was my company. It wasn't, because someone else owned it, really. I only had a small stake in it again. And my moral compass went the complete opposite direction of this person's. He didn't care about the staff. He didn't care about the people. It was all about the money and how we can make more. And I'm all for making profit, but not at the expense of service and everything. And I just was miserable. And actually, I told the MD, and he thought I'd been headhunted, and I was at my lowest. I mean, I've never been in such a bad, dark place.
So how did you lift? How did you lift yourself up then? What did you do to pull yourself?
Well, I crashed even further. Started drinking really alcoholically. I had a few consultancy jobs, and I was one of those, what do they call them, functioning alcoholics. You know, working by day with a few little drinks, just to keep me going, and then drinking a bottle or two at night. And I was a posh alcoholic. I used to drink Cava or Prosecco. I couldn't bear spirits, and at that point I couldn't touch a spirit, so it was just wine or mostly Cava or Prosecco, cheap, not too very expensive. Until I just got to the point where I just wanted to die. I literally I couldn't kill myself because I had people that cared, but I just would go to bed at night and pray that I would have cancer, because that was my way out. I just pray every night, please. And it's such an awful thing to admit when people have it. And but I couldn't think of a way out of where I was, and I couldn't kill myself, and I just didn't want to live. And so I had a protection, like a life insurance policy. If you got cancer, you got paid out.
Oh, critical illness cover,
And I thought, well, that's great. Like, if I've got 6 months to live, I just drink myself into oblivion, and if I'm not dead, but then the cancer will get me, and I'll be done. And that no one will get hurt. No one will have to upset anyone.
Yeah.
And I thank God I reached out to my best friend and said, I just want to die, and I just don't want to keep living, and I just don't know what to do. And she helped me find a rehab place, and I rang them, and they said, oh, you seem like a really good candidate, and how are you going to pay for it? And of course I hadn't even thought about that. I had no money at all. And so I burst into tears and said, oh my God, you must think I'm so stupid. I just didn't even think about that. I'm so desperate. I just didn't even think that I had to have to pay for it. And I'm really sorry for wasting. I mean, I was in absolute floods of tears, and I just said, I'm really, really sorry for wasting your time. I'm so sorry. It's so foolish of me. And I was probably half pissed as well, because by the end I was drinking 24 hours a day. And then she said, well, don't go just yet. And I was like, okay. She said, we do sometimes have charity places. I think you might be a good candidate for a charity place. I'm going to send you some forms. I can't make any promises, but you need to fill them in. Well, I can't fill a form out with ADHD, never mind an alcoholic ADHD person. But luckily, my friend came round and filled all the forms out for me, and I sent them off, and I was given a charity place. And if anyone wants to, I will try and remember to send it to you for the show notes. I am trying to repay that place. I've run a marathon, I've run a half marathon, and every time I do events in my woods for friends and family, I ask them all to make a donation. So I'm up to about £5,000. But I had a free place.
25 grand. That's what.
I think it's probably a bit more than that now, but I'm just going to keep raising money until I die for them, because it was the Ford Trust. They're incredible.
Well, I mean, because if it hadn't been for them, you'd have been.
I wouldn't be here. I would be dead.
I
would be dead now if it wasn't for them. I mean, AA has also been a big part of my recovery, a massive part of my recovery. But yeah, without that first rehab to get me across that line, because it's just the most awful disease, because you can't live with it and you can't live without it. Like, and I've talked to parents now of people, whose children are alcoholic, and they don't understand. And I said, you can't, because even when you're an alcoholic, you can't understand. It's like, why you get up every morning and you say, right, I'm not going to have a drink today. And by 11 o'clock, if you're lucky, towards the end, you're actually trying to get a drink down you while you're dry heaving, because you're having withdrawals. So you're trying to get the drink down you to stop you heaving and shaking, just so you can function. And that's when we call it the jumping off place, where you don't want to be alive. You can't imagine living without it, and you can't live with it. It's just like you're in this hell on earth. And so, but unless you've been there, you can't, because, it just seems crazy. Why would you do that to yourself? It's just the most ridiculous thing, but you actually can't, most people can't without some help. And AA, some people do it with just AA. Some people white knuckle it, as we call it, and last a long time. Some people do manage to put the drink down, but perhaps they weren't, didn't have that gene or whatever it is that makes us drink like that.
I'm interested in knowing, because I've heard a few alcoholics say that once you stop drinking, if you start again, that's what could kill you.
Oh, if people, I mean, some people have a few. I mean, I relapsed a couple of times after rehab before I really got it. that how powerful alcohol was, because I'd had that pink fluffy cloud of not drinking. I thought, well, I could, something happened. My mum died, and I thought, oh, I just,
Yeah.
I know what happened. I was at the railway station after mum died. Had a terrible relationship with my stepfather, who literally stopped me seeing my mum most, pretty much.
Right.
And she had dementia as well, so she couldn't really manage for herself. So it was really difficult to see her. So I kind of grieved for her before she died. I did see her on her deathbed, and we said goodbye, and there was always peace between us. But yeah, he wouldn't let me. After there was a memorial that all my family were going to, and everyone wanted me. There was a big outcry because he didn't want me to go, but he wouldn't allow me to go back to the kind of wake thing afterwards. And so my brother, who'd come over from New Zealand, drove us there, picked me up, drove us there. And then suddenly, after the memorial, he was going to the wake because he lived in the other side of the world, so he'd gone as far away as he possibly could from the family.
Yeah.
But he was he was kind of the golden child because he never had to deal with them. And he left me. He had to leave me at the railway station in April, and I wasn't dressed for cold weather. I went to try and find a coffee. The bakery, well, not a coffee because I don't drink coffee, but a hot chocolate. And they just stopped serving anything, and I saw the off license, and I thought, oh, if they've got one of those tiny bottles of Cava, I'm going to get one of those, and hopefully they won't, and then I won't have to drink. But I was in such a bad place, and I went in, and he didn't have any. He said, I said, yes, I think we've got those. And I was like, oh, I didn't know if to be happy or sad, but anyway. And then he couldn't find them. I thought, okay. I said, oh, don't worry, it'll be fine. And literally, I'd open the door. I remember the bell going ding-a-ling-ling. Those old shops that have the bells.
Yeah.
I found them. I said, I'll have two, thank you. And that was the start of a relapse.
Right.
And I had one more after that. But then I got into AA, and that got me through. But I think if you are sober for a long time and then you relapse, I think people do. They go. I mean, there's so many people that you see disappear and you relapse, and some of them come back, and we always welcome people. That's the one lovely thing about AA is you can even go where you're still drinking. Like you can turn up drunk for a year, and then one day you're like, actually, I don't want to drink anymore. I'm going to not come. I'm going to not drink.
So you've been there a few times where you've relapsed. If there was someone who's listening to this now, and they've been in that position, how important is it to just say no to the bottle?
No to the bottle. Well, it's important, but you need support. Like most people can't get through this without, and I would recommend to anyone just to go to AA. I thought it was a cult and a bit weird before I went there, because no one's ever heard of it, or it just I think it's getting I think people know more about it now. It seems to be a bit more like out in the open, and there's that whole God thing, and it's not anything about God. It's about a higher power or spirit. It's the most spiritual program you could be in if you're at all spiritual. It's just that they use the word God because most people understand it, but they say using the word God as you do or don't understand it, and your higher power could be a red bus. They don't care. It could be the room. But what it is, it's community and support, and people who really understand. Like you're in a meeting, and I'm so far away from a drink now. I went 4 months to South America, and I thought, I'll go to some AA meetings while I'm out there. I completely forgot because I was so busy traveling and doing all my stuff. And a drink didn't even enter my head. But if I don't go back to that meeting, who will be there for that newcomer or the person that's just relapsed? If everyone who gets sober doesn't go back, then, and that's why it's such a lovely community, because some people need the meetings every single week, and other people are so far away from a drink, but they go back to make sure that there's still people there to support those people that are coming in. If everyone that got sober buggered off when I turned up at the door, who would have been there for me, saying, we've been here, we've walked this path, we know what you're going through, just take a day at a time. Here's a phone number, ring me if you want a drink, pick up the phone before you pick up a drink. That's it's such a practical program, and it's so spiritual, and that's where the work starts. AA is not about just putting down the drink. AA is probably one of the most powerful personal development programs you will ever be on. And there is no hiding. You do a moral inventory of everything, and I don't want to put people off because you don't do it straight away, and you don't actually have to do it, so don't panic. But if you're wanting self-development, I said when I was in there and I was new and I was all a bit well, everyone should have this. This should be in schools. It should be, really, but it's not. But it's fine. And then we all go, well, yeah, let's not tell everybody how we all get, a bit healed and a bit wise. Let's keep this a little secret. You can only be, if you're an alcoholic, you can have all this. But if you're not, well, you have to do it the hard way. Do you know what I mean? But it is a really, really challenging but incredible personal development program. And you have to look at all your flaws, all your, what we call them, defects of character, and make a moral inventory, and then you have to apologize to people you've wronged. you know.
Mm.
And you don't always have to do that if it's going to hurt them, or you know, if it's not appropriate. But you know, people who stole stuff years ago, they make a donation to charity to make up for it, to try and make amends, to put things right, you know, when they were drinking and behaving terribly. And everyone is on an even keel, you know. There's this lovely saying I use in ceremonies and stuff when I'm helping people above, and I learned this in my meditation training with Deepak Chopra in the Chopra Institute.
Ah,
May I be
Deepak Chopra. Yeah, great.
I love him. May I, and his another guy there, that he's the chief meditation officer, I think, Roger Gabriel. He's incredible. He's another one of my teachers. But there's this saying, but, and I don't know if he made it up or whether it's just an anonymous quote, but I don't know who wrote it, so I can't attribute it to anyone, but I learnt it from the Chopra Center. May I be above and beneath no one, immune to criticism and flattery, fearless in any situation. And for me,
I love that.
that it says it all. It says it all. And you know, we're all equal on this planet, you know. And there's, I know they say some more equal than others, but the point is we're all come from the same stuff. We're all walking a path, and we're all trying to learn. And you know, some of us learn quicker, some of us learn slower, some of us learn some things, some of us learn other things, but actually we're all equal. And that's something that I used to instill in my company. You know, when I had the reins and I had the, you know, I could dictate the culture of the company, because we had such a beautiful culture in that company. And I think that's what made me so sad, is we'd built up such a beautiful culture at HTML. And then when the new guy came in, he wasn't interested in culture. He didn't care if people work them harder, you know, don't give them, you know, it was just, yeah, I couldn't do it.
And there's always that, you come into the world with nothing and you go out of the world with nothing. And
exactly.
At the end of the day, you go out with what you can fit in a coffin or the jar.
And right now, because of another strange twist of fate, a slightly unscrupulous business partner took 50% of my business illegally, and I chose to use the money that was an out-of-court settlement. It wasn't very much, because the company, you know, it was 6 years I'd spent trying to turn it around from a failing business to a really good business. But the money I had, I paid off a few debts, paid off my woodland, and I had enough money to go traveling for 4 months around South Central America. So I came back with a couple of months' salary, planning to, you know, setting up my healing business, which is what I'm doing now, and doing a tiny bit of non-exec work, but I'm really putting all my efforts into my healing business. But I had a couple of months savings, and I split up with my partner of 16 years as well. Whole big life change again. And I'm the poorest in terms of what people would say is abundance, money. I'm the poorest I've ever been. I've not had to look at what I'm spending or how much milk. Well, I don't buy milk, I have oat milk, but still, I know how much oat milk costs. For I can't tell you how long, because I've always been in a corporate environment earning good, you know, good salaries. But I am definitely the richest and most abundant I've ever been in my life. I've just had, there's a thing when we do meditation, and well, not just in meditation, but there's this place what we call the gap, or the place of infinite possibilities, where anything can happen, you know, in that split second, anything can happen. And something has just happened. I had a pipe, I mean, I went around South Central America because that's one of my pipe dreams, okay, bucket list. But on my bucket list that hasn't had a tick yet, a lot of my bucket list stuff has been ticked off, but was safari.
Right.
And it, you know, obviously that's not going to happen in South Central and North America. But anyway, I was thinking about it the other day, because 3 friends have recently gone on safari in the last year, and someone recently was talking about it, and I was like, oh, that's still on my bucket list. I wonder how I'm not going to be able to afford to do that for a while. And then guess what? In November, I'm going to Malawi. All expenses, well, I say all expenses paid. And I'm going to go and train someone to run cacao ceremonies. And we're going to run a few ceremonies and do a retreat while I'm out there, which is going to pay for us to go on safari. So I've got no money. I haven't got a bean to rub together. Like, I wait for my little paycheck from my non-exec director job to make sure I can feed myself and pay some of my bills. Most of my bills, not all of them, because then suddenly I forget that Canva charge you £129 a year, and it comes up all in one go, and then someone else wants to charge you for your Microsoft, and of course that was all paid for by the company before. Yeah. And now suddenly everything's at my expense. So yeah, it's been an interesting time, and I'm living off grid in my woodland, so I don't have to pay rent, thank God, because otherwise I absolutely couldn't exist, or I would be eating nettles soup probably every day. But I'm so abundant in so many things, and having the privilege of living in nature, the healing that's gone on for me. I started here in November, so I've gone through the worst of the worst of the weather. We had -5, and I do have a wood burner in my little shepherd's hut where my bed is. But most of the time, I'm outside or, between places. I have a little caravan here. This is my podcasting studio. You wouldn't know,
Well,
but but yes, I feel that, and I'm also working on some of my money things because I keep making a lot of money or being very successful, and then suddenly it's kind of taken away. And I've just done some amazing family constellations around that, and it's one of my last podcast, not last one, but just recently, was a guy who's a financial therapist, and it's fascinating, the stories about how our parents or our beliefs about money can be ingrained in us without us even knowing about it. As a child, that he told this one, I don't know how much time we've got because I'm not looking at the clock, but this one incredible story of this girl who because he's an internal family systems therapist as well, so he combines the two. But this woman came to him, she says, I don't know what's wrong with me. She says, I earn a really good salary, but at the end of every month there's not a penny left in my bank account. It literally almost to the penny, like, maybe there's $10. It's in America. She said, and I don't know why I can't save anything. She says, I don't want for anything, I have lovely staff, but I just don't understand why I can't save, and I'd really think it would be good just to save up a bit of money. And so anyway, they did a whole load of therapy around it, and what transpired after unpicking it all, she came, like me, from an abusive family, and she got a job at the age of 12, which kept her out of the home.
Yeah.
So it was her gift, really. But there was a family kind of narrative that said, well, if you have money, you don't have to work. It was like, they were quite poor, and so if you have money, you don't have to work. It was kind of a negative kind of thing. But also she heard, if you have money, then you don't have to work. So she would spend, from her day job as a 12-year-old, she would make sure that she didn't have any money, because if they found out she had money, she thought they would tell her she didn't have to work, and then she'd be stuck at home again. And within 3 months, she'd saved $7,000.
And that's interesting, because as a financial advisor now, I look at people's lifestyles and I get to the bottom of what's going on. Because a lot of people, if they make £10,000 a year, will spend £10,000. If they make 100,000 a million, they spend that money. And then we look at mind shifting. So I appreciate exactly how that works. And it's about legacies as well, what you want to leave and why you do stuff, because my mission, which I've shared many times, and I know you're on a mission now. So if we just recap, right? So your childhood was interesting, and you took a few knocks. Then you were in the military at an interesting time where sexist comments didn't make any difference. Just the same as Major Houlihan, was it, in MASH? Right? She used to be called Hot Lips.
Yeah, Hot Lips Houlihan.
And she really hated that, because she just passed away, bless her.
Yeah.
And so you were in a time then you got out, slipped into this job with AIG by being in the right place at the right time.
At the right time.
And then got there, and then you've just brought companies around, really turned them up, and then maybe your relationship with how you money or whatever has got you. And in fairness, of course, that you've had a few knocks, and you've just shared with us, you've just gone through a split up, or recently with a partner of 16 years. But now, even though some people may class you as broke, I think you're one of the richest people in the world.
I feel it. I really feel it. I feel like I'm super abundant, and I'm really grateful, and I think gratitude's a big thing. Like, I have a big gratitude practice every morning, and I think sometimes when we're down, it's hard to be grateful, because we think, well, this terrible thing's happening to me, that terrible thing's happening. But even when I'm like thinking, oh my God, how am I going to pay this bill? Or, I just look around me and I think, oh my God, I am so blessed. Like, I have my health, I have amazing friends, I'm tipping off to Malawi, and, and there's, and I feel so joyful, in my heart, and my business is picking up. Everyone said, oh, don't worry, just go on Instagram. And I hate social media. I mean, I don't hate social media, I just hate having to do it. And I don't really watch it either, because I don't really get it.
Well, you know what? Someday soon you're going to be able to get someone who can do it for you.
Well, exactly. And at the moment, I'm just doing my best, and I have a few people that help out, and I do a lot of exchanging and bartering actually at the moment for goods and services,
Hey,
which
and
is really
that's how we started off, isn't it? Before
exactly. You know, I've got something that
think
they
of
want, they
money,
can't
yeah,
afford it. They've got something that I want, can't really afford it. Let's swap.
yeah. Lo-
So cool.
Long
Yeah, but
before money was
I feel very
created,
blessed.
that was what we did. So,
Yeah.
how important, like you just talked about your network, how important do you think it is networking, whether that be on a social basis or a business basis?
I think on a social, I think your network of friends, whatever size they are, it's quality, not quantity. You know, first of all, we can't always keep up with everybody if we have a really massive social network. I am very blessed to have sort of five female friends that are just my bedrocks. Um, and not all in this country, you know, kind of slightly spread out. But and I, you know, I've always kept. I've always been a networker, as in I'm a people. I'm a people person. Like when I'm with people, I love being with people. When I'm not, I really value my own time. Someone used this term, and I can't remember if there's an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert, but whichever one. Basically, when I'm with people, I'm the life and soul of the party, but I then need to go and hibernate.
Yeah,
I need to go back to my cave and have some alone time, me time, no one else, you know. Otherwise, I get, you know, because I'm so high energy when I'm with people, I really need that kind of
yeah, yeah.
drawing in sort of thing. But I didn't know that for many years. And I always felt like I had to be the life and soul of the party the whole time. Because I was, oh, you're so funny. And so, in terms of actual networking, in like business networking, to be honest with you, every time I've gone, I see I'm all about let's support each other. Like I'm really big into community. Like let's
Yeah,
help each other. Like we've lost a lot of people have lost that sense of community. Not
yeah.
everyone, but you know, look, let's all help each other out. You know, my pipe dream. I haven't told you this, but my pipe dream, when I thought I was going to sell my business for a lot of money, my next business was going to be a children's home and an old people's home in one. I
Right.
mean, obviously the accommodation would be separate, but the kids that didn't have family would have grandparents built in, and
Wow,
because of
what a
my
fabulous
childhood,
way.
I knew how valuable that was for me to have grandparents when my parents were really a bit, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
And so it felt like the children would have the grandparents, but also one of the problems with the care system at the moment, I believe, really believe, and if there's any rich investors out there, I'm still up for this, by the way. Um, but the elderly, I looked after a lady for ages. When I was in between jobs, I was on garden leave, you know, from you know HML. I couldn't do nothing for 6 months, to be fair, and so I put up a notice saying carer available, ex-nurse, because I'd let my registration lapse by then, can do gardening, cleaning, cooking, looking, you know, caring sort of thing. And got some lovely clients, and one of them was this lady with sort of early onset dementia. I used to go around, and we used to do gardening together. We used to do jigsaws together, and I used to cook her a 3-course meal twice a week, and loved it, absolutely loved it. She was fascinating. I love. Oh, now I'm getting old myself, but you know, I love the fascinating, the wisdom and stuff. But she then had to go into a home because she was too bad to live at home, and I used to go in. I wasn't going to be a full-time carer or anything, and I'd go and visit her, and she said, "Do you know? I don't know this place," because she wasn't a television watcher. I don't watch television. Like if you sat me in front of a telly, it would do my head in.
yeah.
And it wasn't her either. She never really used to watch telly, and she was always doing a jigsaw or gardening or doing. She was really active, you know. She had a dog for ages, and anyway, she got there and she said, oh, "This place is terrible. Said, they won't let me do anything. I've tried to ask them if I can hoover and look at the place. I mean, there's dirt all over there." And she said, "And I've asked if I can just help with the meals, prepare the meals. I can peel potatoes. I mean, I'm not useless." And that's the problem. We put not, you know, a lot of the people who've got dementia or can't manage themselves, they're put somewhere and they don't
Yeah.
have any meaning and purpose.
Mm.
And I wanted to create a community where everyone helps, you know, to the level of their ability. If you can peel potatoes, peel potatoes. If you can't, haven't got the function, you can read a story to a kid, you know. But so everyone is part of a community, and we have our own land, our own animals. The kids learn to, you know, how to grow crops. The old people can teach them how to garden. You know, most of them love
And
gardening.
that brings together a community like in India, or
Yeah.
and about
They say, don't they? It
40.
takes community to raise a child. I mean,
Yeah,
we've
it
just
does.
lost all of
Yeah.
that. We've lost all of that. So it's really sad. So I really like to bring people together. I mean, that's part of my inspired healing business. That's part of, you know, what I do is bring people together on retreats or in ceremony, and you know, really try and bring that sense of community back. And I've always, you know, whether I was in business or not, it's like try to care about the people I'm doing business with. And if I don't like people, if I don't believe in their ethos, if I think they're just in it for the money, I don't do business with them, because that's my prerogative. And that's why I had to walk away.
Yeah. So we're coming towards the end now, and I know we could keep talking all day. And
You've got to stop me.
And I know that I'll be coming on your podcast very soon.
Yeah.
So thank you. An interesting question, because I think that you've experienced a bit of this one, is how do you deal with failure?
Depends whether you see it failure. Someone said recently, and I can't remember what it's an acronym. First attempt
In learning. First
Yeah.
attempt in learning.
And I thought that's brilliant. But it's the same. The same, that guy that invented the light bulb. I think it took him like 1,000 or more goes before he actually got it right.
Yeah, and let me put it into context, because what I mean by that, because I'm great at failure. I've done it quite a few times. Now, I believe that you've not failed until you give up. So the reason I put it into context and framed it as you've been there a few times is because you must have a switch or something that you're able to implement, activate, engage with when failure starts looking. What do you do? How do you deal with it?
Well, I think when I was younger, it was that I'm not going to let the bastards get me down. Like, I've got this far, however hard it is. What's the point in getting this far if I'm not going to keep going? Even when I was like wanted to kill myself or die, there was a part of me that was like, Helen, you can't do this, which is why I reached out for help. But once I got into the spiritual kind of stuff, and there's these lovely set of affirmations for a harmonious life, which I'll share with you.
Please do.
Not everyone understands them, but the first one is, I welcome uncertainty, because the only thing we're certain of is uncertainty. When things don't seem to be going my way, I trust the universe has better plans for me. And that has happened every single time in my life. When something has gone wrong, something better has replaced it. And yes, there might have been a really painful growth period, but also I know that when the pain is bad, it's when I'm growing the most. And I've just got to grit my teeth, reach out to my friends, have a good cry, get a hug, read a book, switch off, start again, like reset. There's a number of different ones, and I won't go through all of them, but yeah, there's certainly things now from a spiritual point of view that I trust that everything's in divine order, and that I just need to find the magic, and what I do to others, I get back, and we're all a mirror, aren't we, of each other, showing each other where we need to grow. So I think it's just that, and being blessed with friends that I can literally go to and like, oh, why is this happening? They're like, you know what's happening, Helen? I'm like, okay, I do, but could you just be really nice to me for an hour?
And I remember my mum gave me a passage once called Footsteps, and the upshot is every time that I was at my lowest,
I cried the first time I read that. I said that in a ceremony, literally on Saturday, because we were talking about it. And then when it's Jesus, and the guy says, why is it every time in my life, because there was 2 sets of footprints in the sand, and there's just one set. He said, why is it in times of my life, you left me? And he said, oh my God, that's not when I left you. That's when I carried you.
I only see one set of footprints instead of 2. He says, I never left you, I was carrying you.
Oh, I've got goosebumps. But yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? The universe isn't out to get us, it's out to support us. But we get in the way sometimes. And it's trust.
And the other thing, have the courage to change the things you can, the humility to accept the things you can't, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Well, that's it. That serenity prayer is the AA prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that's the thing, isn't it? And and also it is about reading and talking to people, and there's more and more stuff out there. I mean, there weren't that many self-help books when I was a kid, but younger, but now they're everywhere, people, I think, if we can get our heads around the fact that actually there's a lovely quote by this guy called Swami Chitmayananda, and it says, The bad things in life often open our eyes to the good things we weren't paying attention to. In
Yeah.
all adversity, there is a hidden gift of spiritual blessing.
Yeah.
And I think my biggest blessing is that I am on a spiritual adventure, because
Fantastic.
if I didn't have that, God knows how I'd get along, because I trust in that. And every time something, I think, oh God, how am I going to do that? Someone will buy some cacao off me, or someone
Yeah.
remembers they owed me 200 quid. And I'm like, oh, I'm 200 quid short. And thank
You'll
God
have
for that.
you'll have to get that spreadsheet going again where when
Exactly.
someone owes you money, at least to give you an idea.
I know.
Listen, what's how what's the one tip you give to a veteran, or maybe someone who's coming out of the military, or maybe just someone who's in business or not having the greatest of day? What's the one tip that you give them from your experience?
I would probably say go out in nature, no matter the weather. Connect with the earth, connect with the trees or whatever you're looking at. Look at how beautiful it is. Look how incredible our planet is, and know that there's something bigger out there guiding you, and you've just got to trust and welcome that uncertainty, and know that you only have to do it for today, just for one day, and then tomorrow's a new day and a new start, and you can try and do it. But take yourself out of the madness if you can. Get into nature, because it's one of the best healers that there ever is. Hug a tree.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was thinking about that because I remember back in the 80s when Greenham Common was going on and everything, and it was all the tree huggers were going. And now and we were involved with RAF. There was a big thing in RAF Molesworth and stuff, and I was involved in putting 28-mile Gannet corn around the perimeter of the American base, and that was, wow, what a hard job that was. We didn't do 28 miles, my troop, but there were lots of squadrons, and all the Royal Engineers matched up. Anyway, that's another story. The fact is that, isn't it, what goes around comes around, because the planet is going to tell you. The planet just says, hey, I'm not having this anymore, have some of that. So
You get back what you give out.
yeah. So with your skills that you've openly shared with us, how transferable do you think the military skills, the skills you learned in the military, are to City Street?
A lot of them are very transparent. I mean, especially for me as a nurse, I could take that profession out.
Yeah.
But I also think for all the challenges, it really does teach you. Well, I don't know, because sometimes it's hard, isn't it? Because there's some really great things that are really transferable, but there's also, like, when you come out, you lose that camaraderie,
let's see. Let's see with what not losing. What are the skills, the transferable skills?
I mean, I think it is like having a bit of a tough skin, to be water off a duck's back. I mean, I remember parade, and they'd say such awful things to you, and you just couldn't say anything, and yes ma'am, no ma'am. But sometimes that's the best policy, not answering back, not trying to have the last word, and just allowing things to be, but also that sense of camaraderie, that sense of community, is really strong. And if you can keep hold of that, it's such a gift, it's such a blessing. And go on.
No, go on. And
no, I was just saying, and the skills that you learn, they are transferable. I mean, sometimes we think they're not, but every single skill we learn in life is always transferable. Whatever it is, it's got a use outside of the army. It's just sometimes we can't see the wood for the trees when we come out, because it's such a different, strange world. And
sometimes it's good to not see the wood for the trees, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you get in touch with nature. So listen, right. What does the future hold for you now? Right, you're going to Malawi now, which just dropped in your lap. Not because you didn't do any work to get it, by the way, because you would have done stuff to make you good enough to get that trip to Malawi. Right.
Yeah, I mean that's the power of Instagram, isn't it? I mean, I always moan about social media, but this lady runs a spice plantation, and she's just started growing cacao and wanted to work with cacao. And she'd been searching and searching for someone that she really connected with, and then she found me on Instagram, and she was like, I think she's my person. And she came on one of my Zoom cacaos, and was like, you're it.
Yeah.
So, the power of social media, I mean, even though I struggle with it, I can't knock it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So what does the future hold for you then?
I had someone that could do it for me. That's the first thing I'm going to outsource.
Yeah.
But
what's the future hold?
It's just building up my business, because it is word of mouth. I mean, Instagram's great for certain things, but actually for day-to-day customers, I think people see it and like it, but actually it doesn't always translate to footfall. But I'm growing my business work by word of mouth, and it's the, and I'm having to learn how to do things that I've never had to do before, because I've always had, administrative support, PAs and
Yeah.
stuff. And so I'm learning a lot. And yes, I will be outsourcing as soon as things get. But it's only been a year and a bit since I came back. I think in my head, because I've grown other businesses, I thought, oh well, I'll be making loads of money within
You're
a year.
expecting
And
to
I'm
be a
like,
multi-million
not quite
pound
as
business.
easy as I thought. So it's just, but word of mouth works. People are bringing people. This weekend, and I did a sweat lodge and a cacao, on 2 different days or 2 different day retreats, and they're bringing their friends, and so the numbers are building. And
Yeah.
I think next year I made a profit last year, just not very much.
Hey, that's brilliant.
And oh yeah, I made a profit. Luckily not enough to have to pay tax this year.
Hey, but there you go. You see, the thing is, though,
It's
that you're
money,
going and you're
and
still in
it's
business.
enough. And
So
that's
how
the
can
thing.
people get in
Enough.
touch with you? How can people get in
And then
touch?
I think next year is going to be, I feel like next year is going to be my year. In fact, the rest of this year, because it's very seasonal business as well, my work.
Yeah.
So I kind of need to make enough money in the sort of 6-7 months of the sort of spring, summer, autumn,
So
to get me through the winter. I do private work and stuff in the winter, but all the tents, the retreats don't happen. People don't want to come to the woods in the winter, but some hardy people do actually, and I have tents up all year round for just individuals and small groups. But I think just being able to outsource and having enough money to outsource the bits I don't like and really focus on the bits I love, and I can see that happening next year. So yeah, I'm really excited. And
fantastic. And how can people get in touch? How can people get in touch?
My website is www.inspiredhealing.co.uk, and my Instagram is Helens_inspired_healing, and that's probably the best way. In my bio link there, you can go to my podcast, you can get to my website, you can get my WhatsApp number. So I prefer people just WhatsApp me, because I forget I'm ADHD and I forget to check my emails. And then a whole week goes past, and I'm like, oh my God, and then I'm overwhelmed, and I have a quick look and check there's nothing really urgent, and then I miss things. So, but yes, WhatsApp's my preferred, but yeah, you can.
And there's LinkedIn as well. And LinkedIn.
And you can call me. So yeah.
Well, Helen Valentino, thank you for sharing your past, and you've had a roller coaster, and I dare say that success is inevitable for you. I know that. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to having you back, as you say. You've got a lot of wisdom to share with my audience too. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, so remember to find out more about how I work and lots of the stuff, the resources that you can get to help you get even better results than you are now, visit joeteams.com. That's JOETEAMS.com, where you can find out lots and lots of helpful resources to help you get an even better result than you are today. So remember, until we meet again, have a brilliant day. Thank you. joeteams.com is a resource I have created to fulfill my mission to help 1 million veterans and business entrepreneurs like you achieve the goals, dreams, and aspirations they deserve. joeteams.com is jam-packed full of valuable resources specifically designed to help you on your journey to success. Visit joeteams.com now to find out how you can join and start your journey to success immediately. That's joeteams.com, JOETEAMS, joeteams.com. And until we meet again, have a brilliant day.